Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Rules of Engagement. As always, I'm your host, Nick axslav, ranish, as we explore strategies and tactics used in the game of Starcraft 2. Today, we're going to analyze the MVP versus Curious set. There was a 3-game set. Game 1 was on Ohana. We'll take a look at that first. We'll take a look at Game 2, then Game 3, and then, of course, at the end of the show, it's going to be the Q&A. So tweet me any questions you want answered about anything, whatever it happens to be. Tweet them to me at axslav, and we'll hit those up at the end of the show. But for now, let's jump into game number 1, MVP versus Curious on Ohana. This was probably the longest game of this set. A lot of cool stuff went on, but the 3 things I'll focus on are how to utilize an early game Reaper squad, how to defend Hellbat drops, and also how to tackle a mech death ball in the late game once it gets to that huge and scary type of volume. So we'll jump into the map first here. We'll take a look at, we'll just watch this through MVP's viewpoint, because I think that's the best way to do this. We'll just have it on play. And we'll talk about how to use the early game Reapers to be as effective as possible, right? So, there's a couple cool things about Reapers, right? In Heart of Swarm, for you guys who don't know it, the Reapers have more life than in Wings of Liberty. They move much faster than they did in Wings of Liberty. They're easier to produce than they were in Wings of Liberty, because you don't need a tech lab, and of course, most importantly, they regenerate. They do a little bit less damage, but they regenerate more life faster. Great usage to harass. So, in fact, if we just actually, let's just lock the screen on this part on the harassing function, and in fact, let's just actually follow Reaper. We'll follow Reaper around. And I didn't follow the Reaper. 1 second. We'll follow these Reaper guys around, and then we'll play it. And so, when you're doing a Reaper harass, the whole goal here is to maintain constant contact with the enemy, right? Your Reaper's always going to be in their face, always in there, poking in, doing damage, running out. Poking in, doing damage, running away. Keep doing that. Because the whole idea is you have to utilize the fact that they regenerate your life. So you want to trade some of your life for some damage, run away before you lose any, regenerate, keep doing that. Constant contact without any losses. If you notice, that's what MVP does. He backs away just to regenerate. As soon as he's regenerated, he's going to head straight back in and do some more damage, try to get a queen kill. You know, it's not like you can run in there and kill queen and run away. Well, you can run in there, halfway kill queen, run away, regenerate, come back in, finish a job. Or come back in, halfway kill another queen, run away. The next time there's 2 weakened queens, whichever one's easy for you to target. So you see, coming back in, finishing a job. Unfortunately, the Red Reaper, you got to pull that guy back. So try to avoid any losses. With your speed, you should do that. But constant contact with the enemy. If you're constantly doing damage and you're not losing anything, that's a win-win situation, right? So that's how you want to do the early Reaper Death Squad. Constantly be in your opponent's face. And then eventually, you can even start pulling in things like the Widow Mines, right? Should be being produced right here. You know, while you're constantly harassing the Reaper, you're expanding, you're teching up, and you're going to bring in the Widow Mines. But the idea is that you're just constantly in your opponent's face, preventing the third base, getting good unit trades, doing damage, all at the cost of absolutely nothing on your end, right? So as the game goes on, right, your natural Terran inclination is then to follow all this stuff up with the Hellbat drop. Because Hellbats are really good, right? So why would you not get Hellbats? Just because you're really good. So you come in for the Hellbat drop. This is what we'll talk about the Zerg perspective. We've seen these Hellbat drops be effective time and time again, right? But from the Zerg perspective, what can you do against a Hellbat drop, right? We know how effective they are. How can you stop it? You've been taking damage all game by the Reapers. You don't want to spend all your money to get this giant force of a whole bunch of guys. You want to learn how to defend it as cost efficiently as possible. So to minimize Hellbat drop damage, anything that can attack air, when that drop comes in, focus it, right? So look at this. Even when he drops the Hellbats, the Queen is not on attack move. It's focusing the medevac. Very important, focus that medevac down, stay on the medevac. Because if you damage the medevac, right, if you force that medevac away, the Hellbats can no longer be picked up and run down the drones. So you run your drones away and you focus the medevac, you combine those 2 ideas, and you won't take too many losses. If you just run the drones, the medevac can pick up the Hellbat, using Ignite Afterburners, run down the drones, and do more damage. So you have to make sure that you get the medevac out of there, because that's what allows Hellbats to run down the drones. But then you also still have to run the drones, because even without the medevac, the Hellbats are in that worker line, they will kill your drones. So going forward here, it's going to be a typical game. MVP, even though he got almost nothing done with that drop, he only killed, I think, 2 drones. He still is going to be ahead because, you know, he built a lot of command centers, right? And if you're playing Terran in Heart of the Swarm, you do that Reaper contain to stun on your opponent's third. You just build a whole bunch of command centers of your own. You're always going to be ahead, just because that's the way Reapers work. So he's building this giant mech death ball, right? He's going to be very safe, get siege tanks, got some bunkers. Keep making siege tanks, put him in a good spread if you look at his vision. He doesn't have too much, but it's not that important because he's got the mines down front. He's got a siege tank spread. He's going to build a depot wall here. He's going to have some Vikings clear the way for him. You know, he's got a pretty much a very solid defensive setup there where not much can be touched, and then he's just continually building more and more of these command centers behind him. Now, there's multiple ways MVP can go about playing this mech, right? He can do exactly what he's doing now, which is like the Wings of Liberty style, where you spend all your minerals on extra command centers, right? We can see more and more command centers being built. He's up to like 7 right now. And then you just build all tanks, right? This is a very slow army to max on because tanks are expensive and they take a long time to produce. Now, in Heart of the Swarm, a lot of people play mech differently, with, of course, getting a lot of... they get a lot more reactor factories and spend the minerals on Hellbats, right? Get a giant Hellbat army instead of letting them stockpile up like this. And that's something that's a different situation to deal with, but right now we're going to talk about basically the turtle mech style. Of course, again, you know, if there's Hellbat drops, if you notice, he always has a squad of Hydra back at base, like a mobile defense force, just to make sure those Hellbat drops can't be too much of a problem. On creep, Hydras are very fast, can deal with those medevacs without a problem. MVP's again trying to trade off Hellions as he builds up the giant Doom mech death ball. So now we get to the point in the game where we're taking a look at, let's say, from, you know, we're going to take a look at this from the perspective of Curious, right? This is what he's got. He's got Roaches, Hydralists, a couple Ultralists, a couple Vipers, okay? How does he tackle this mech death ball? Right, it's easier. So, I mean, if you look at the units tab, right now there's 24 tanks. That number is only going to get higher. A lot of tanks. How do you deal with it? Well, Roaches and Hydras aren't going to really clash into a mass tank. If there's a lot of tanks and they're in siege mode and stuff, it's going to be hard to break that tank line. With Blinding Cloud, right, you can actually do pretty well. If you place the Blinding Cloud well, it's very effective. You can actually trade almost cost evenly versus tank lines. And that's exactly what he's going to opt for. We're going to see how that works out. But, well, let's just actually, before we get into some other options, why don't we just take a look at exactly how you can use Blinding Cloud to make Roaches and Hydralists a little bit more effective against tanks than they would be in Wings of Liberty. So fast forward this just a bit, and now we're getting to a spot where all of a sudden the mech ball's moving out. He wants to engage it, right? And so this is an army where the Zerg's going to push in, the Terran's going to retreat. Now, one thing you have to do is you have to say, my Vipers, I want to use Blinding Clouds, right? And I can cast 8 of them. But I got to worry about the Vikings killing the Vipers. So I have to cast my spells before the Vikings die, right? And the other thing I have to worry about is making sure it's casted on useful areas, right? So this is where you have to make sure you don't jump the gun too much, right? And you want to cast it pretty much into ideal spots. Now, as we can see here, coming to this battle, where did he cast the Blinding Clouds, right? Well, what he did is he casted them across the entire front of the Terran army, right? He got this area right here. All Blinding Clouded up. And then, you know, it's nice because these tanks can't shoot. They'll have to unsiege back away. But the ideal way to use Blinding Cloud is similar to Storm, right? You think about how Protoss play versus Terran. Yes, they sometimes storm this area right here. But that's only because Templar are very slow. And it's hard, and you want to cast that storm before the ghosts take you out. If there's no ghosts, or you can get further. The ideal place to put Storms or Blinding Clouds is back in this area. Why would you do it back there? Well, think of how the Terran's going to micro. Terran has greater range. They want to kite back from you anyway, right? So ideally, you put the Blinding Cloud or the Storms, whatever it is, behind their army, the very back row. And that way, they have 2 options. One, they stay at the front, then they're all going to die, right? If they stay here, your guys are going to kill them, right? Option B, they run back, and then they're stuck in the Blinding Cloud, and then they're useless, and you kill them. So, no matter what they do, they die. That's the ideal option. And the Vipers, with their high speed, they're a little bit more attuned than Templar to really get into the back and hit that Blinding Cloud. Of course, there's too many Vikings. It's not quite going to work unless you add in Corruptors or something else to help tank, just because you'll die before you can get in there. But if possible, there's only 4 Vikings like this, go put those Blinding Clouds in the back of the army. Because what's going to happen here, let's actually take a look. Let's back this up a second and take a look at how this battle goes unit loss-wise. All right, so coming into this, the Terran's already lost about 2,000 more resources than the Zerg, right? So coming into the battle, he's going to come in here. The Blinding Clouds are cast. They're cast at the front. The Terran kites backwards and is able to engage okay against the Roach Hydra Ultras army, right? Not ideal. Blinding Clouds really helped the Roaches and Hydras a tremendous amount. They would have been slaughtered otherwise. But at the end of the day, what happens, right? We look at units lost tab. The Terrans now lost 2,500 resources more than a Zerg. So it's a fair statement to say that that battle was cost efficient for the Zerg player. And a lot of people are saying, wait a minute, Zerg's cost efficient versus Mech Death Ball. All of a sudden, that's a great counter to it. But the thing you have to consider is that you can never go blow for blow, no matter what race you are, unless you're Terran. You can never trade evenly versus Terran in the late game, right? Terran late game will always have the best economy. And so if you're just trading X amount of units for X amount of units, and there's no position gain, there's no initiative gain, there's no opportunity to do more damage after that. If it's just trading units and you both retreat and you go remax again, always favors a Terran player in the late game, because they're always going to have the best economy because of mules, and so they can replace their losses easier than you can replace yours in a longer term situation. Now, because of production techniques, sometimes you can just trade and then use that gap to try to take over locations and do some critical damage fast. But if it's a situation where, like here, you want to rebuild an Ultras, right? He's rebuilding mostly an Ultras in this situation. By the time those come up, the Terran will reproduce as well. So trading money evenly with a Terran or even slightly to your favor is actually bad, because Terran's kind of the brute force race as far as income goes. So Blinding Cloud can be very, very good at dealing mech straight up, but it's still a Terran Mech Death Ball. It's still tough to deal straight up. I want to show you guys one other cool way you can use Blinding Cloud. So if we back this up just a little bit, imagine when he had this situation here. And yes, you can go straight up against the Terran army, and yes, you can trade evenly. And it may seem unfair that that's not actually good for you, but that's just the way the game is, right? Terrans has the best economy, so you don't want to trade evenly with them. One thing you can do against mech is, instead of saying, you know what, I'm instead of using Blinding Cloud against army, what I can do here is his army's out here, right? Let's say the Roach is there. I see these armies out here. I can move my army over here, and if you look at this, drop tech isn't quite done yet, but let's just say Curious got drop tech a little bit faster. Another use of Blinding Cloud is, instead of putting it on the army, you can come over here and you can say, you know what? I'm going to grab all my guys in Overlords. Not all of them, not the Ultralists. I'll grab the Roaches into Hydralists, because they don't fight that well against siege tanks. Put them into Overlords. I'll Blinding Cloud these two guys to cancel those missile turrets out, and I'll drop on his production facilities, right? And then we're in a situation where I've got a bunch of Roaches and Hydras all in this juicy area, and I can knock out the key production facilities. And the mech player, he's got to come up this ramp right here, right? Let's say the mech player is coming back to defend his main base. If he comes up this ramp over here and just tries a straight A move, I've got a great concave here, right? Which means he's going to have to take a second to stop, and I'll have to siege mode his guys up here, right? You have the siege tanks up over here, so he can protect his other guys as they get up the ramp. And then when he siege modes guys up here, all I have to do is I have to back up here. And then I can kill more stuff, right? I can kill this orbital here. I can kill this starport, another factory. So you can kite your way back to the Terran base. They have to retake it slowly and surely. You can do massive, massive damage with those Doom drops against mech, because it's hard for that mech to move around. Then meanwhile, if they overcommit and move too much of their army back in that main, you can grab your Ultralists, right? I mean, he's only got 4 right now, but 4 Ultralists can actually do a decent job. Grab those 4 Ultralists, send them to this planetary over here, and knock out their 4th base when the army leaves. So, I mean, yes, you can try to go heads up versus Terran. If the Terran clumps your tanks way too much, like what MVP did, you get the perfect engagement, you can trade well, right? In fact, let's actually take a look at the battle again. So going forward, yes, if a Terran is caught unprepared, and they're all on siege mode, and you get a nice engagement, you have great Blinding Clouds, you come in there and you trade well, that's still not really in your interest, because as long as Terran can trade, they're gonna come out ahead. It's because it's mules and it's Terran, right? So while this is a decent option and it sounds good on paper, what happens is, if you look at this, right, now we're in a situation where the Zerg was able to remax fast because of production, but Terran will be remaxed very shortly thereafter. And if you look at the income, well, right now Terran doesn't have any because they haven't dropped any mules. But as soon as he drops the mule hammer over here, the Terran income will be way ahead of the Zerg income. And of course, a lot of his money's all spent on all these queued up units here. As soon as those hit the field, he's going to have another giant army. And then the Zerg player can't keep reinforcing where the Terran player can. All he has to do is drop the mule hammer, and his income is going to be, you know, very, 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 it's going to jump up high even with a very small worker count. So, going blow for blow versus Terran player is generally not advisable, because you can see on the remax, they can plow through you. You haven't been able to replace your Vipers. He has more Vikings now. The same trick won't work twice. The Terran Death Bolt will keep rolling in, right? And now in this game, Curious is able to, you see he's building emergency mutalists over here, right? And those emergency mutalists, they delay the game for another 10 minutes because they stop this attack. But, you know, MVP just builds some Thors and goes back again and finishes the game. So, the more of the story is, if you're Zerg, you think you're doing a great engagement, you gotta strike at the mech production facilities, because that's really, unless you can shatter the army enough so you can then go forward and kill a base, just trading unit for unit isn't in your interest. Against late game mech death ball. Early and mid game is different, because early mid game, you kill a Terran army, now you have the space to drone up and expand. But late game, when both players have already expanded, trading armies is in a Terran's interest. Late game, as a Zerg player, you either just shatter an army enough that you can then kill an expansion, or you try to go harass their production, knock out all those key elements that make that Terran, that allow them to spend their money. So that wraps up game number 1. We'll take a short break and be on to game number 2.